Is going. Hang with me. So, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on both pages. I'm having some technical difficulties here, which is good because I'm sure those of you who are watching from an online and from your who are teaching in an online environment know how difficult this is at this time. But here we are. If you're joining me for the first time, please tag where you're from. Just put in the chat box. Post in the chat box where you're joining from. I see Michigan, North Carolina, California. Hi, Helen. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in every week. Who else? Claire is watching, my friend from Michigan. Good to see you. Any new teachers or student teachers on? Would you just type in the chat box that you're a student teacher joining? I've been getting emails from student teachers saying, don't forget us, include us in the Teachers Lounge. So I'm Dr. Cathy Owens-Oliver, and welcome to the Teachers Lounge. I've been doing this on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, just as a way of providing some inspiration and encouragement to teachers all across the country and the world who have suddenly found yourselves in a classroom without walls. Some of you are used to the online teaching environment. For some of you, this is brand new. For some, you may have had a lot of training, and for others, you're still learning as you go. That's part of what we do as teachers. Sometimes we have to fly by the seat of our pants. And so I thought I would share some strategies and tips with you that help you navigate your way through this environment, doing what works for you and what should work for your students. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from these. I've had some parents, I've had some principals contact me and say, look, I'm so glad you're doing this. Teachers in my school enjoy it. Parents are saying, you're helping me, not just the teachers. I'm trying some of these strategies. I spoke with a parent today from out west who said her students are still not in an online environment. Her children at home, they're getting worksheet packets for 2 weeks at a time. And every 2 weeks they get another packet of worksheets, and all of the children are self-pacing. That was a little heart-wrenching for me because I'm not sure children of all age groups even know how to self-pace. And I've used my own story of growing up with certain stereotypical limitations. I would not have had the kind of support at home to help me get through a packet of worksheets on my own. So it was just heart-wrenching when I heard that story today. So hopefully what I share with you all tonight will be beneficial for teachers and school leaders and other colleagues and professionals in a school building, but also helpful for parents who are watching. So I want to talk tonight about AAA, applying alternative assessments. AAA, apply alternative assessments. In my work of 25 years as an educator, I have taught high school English. I taught other things, journalism and yearbook, creative writing. I taught a class for students who were interested in going into a teaching career. All my life, I wanted to be a teacher. So I have made this my life work, my vocation, my personal ministry, not just a job. And anyone out there who's an educator, you know that the teaching industry or field is not a job. It's a life work that you never really get to clock out from or sign off from. You carry students with you all the time. And so in my travels and in my work across the country of doing this for many, many years, I've also been able to teach at the college level, which I'm still doing now. And I love serving as adjunct faculty. I've worked in the actual classroom. I've supervised student teachers during their clinical experience or internship. I think what I've enjoyed the most is an introduction to teaching course that I do for people who are career switchers. So they're coming from other non-education related fields into the teaching profession, and I help them get acclimated. It's an introduction to teaching class. And there are a lot of assumptions being made about what teachers should know and be able to do, both by those who evaluate teachers, but also parents and other community citizens and other professionals who don't understand the teaching work or teaching as a life work. But my students or soon-to-be student teachers have often said to me, thank you for taking the time to talk about student assessment and student evaluation in a way I've never heard it before. So I thought, as a part of encouragement and empowerment for those of you who are in the classroom and for parents, I would share a little bit about alternative assessments. This is so critical. If you don't understand this as a parent or even as a teaching professional, and certainly as a school leader, you'll get frustrated when you don't see the growth or gains or milestones you expect students to have. But in this sudden world online teaching environment, we cannot evaluate student learning and student progress in the traditional way or the way we would do it in the classroom. So AAA is the focus tonight, applying alternative assessments. One of the things that my college students said to me is that they thought student assessment or evaluation is to give a test and then see how the students perform, whether or not they fare well on the test. And there's also an assumption that if students don't do well, it's their problem and not the instructor. And so I have to make a worldwide announcement. When students are not achieving, it is not the student's fault. We don't blame the client, the patient, or the student in any other career. If you have a surgery and the surgery is unsuccessful, we don't blame you. It's your fault that your surgery didn't go well. If you go to the dentist to have a procedure done and the procedure is not done well, it's not enjoyable, it didn't turn out the way you intended or what you paid for, you don't say, well, it was your teeth's fault. You don't say that it's your own fault. Something wasn't right with your teeth. And so that's why the procedure or the learning did not go well. We don't do it with an attorney. We don't blame the client in any profession except teaching. When students don't learn, we blame the student per se. And I think as teachers, we have to take responsibility for student learning and what happens or what we should do next when students aren't learning. Now, I'm not pointing the finger. I'm doing this to help you. So for parents and for teachers who are out there, it's important for you to understand that student learning, assessment, and evaluation in this pandemic environment is not going to be like it is in the classroom. So for the teachers out there, give yourself a break. For the school leaders or administrators out there, give these teachers a break. And for parents and children all over the world, give yourself a break. In a classroom, you know that you have all kinds of resources, materials, manipulatives, things on the wall, everything that is contributing to the instructional delivery and your learning. In a home environment, you just don't have that, even if you want it. So I want to deal with alternative ways to assess. First of all, and this is what I share with my student teachers all the time, when I say an alternative, I mean a different way of evaluating or determining if students understand the instruction or if they have learned what it is you intended for them to learn or met certain objectives or milestones. So in these online environments, whether you're teaching a full 3-hour window, a 2-hour window, whether you're teaching to 30 or 45 minutes and then students take a break and then come back to Zoom, Blackboard, Canvas, whatever online platform you're using, your school district or your state may have its own online platform. And so maybe you take breaks periodically and the students come back at different times throughout the day. Regardless of what the structure is, you won't be able to give a written assignment or put an assignment on the smart board, Blackboard, whatever board you're using in your classroom, and then walk around the classroom to monitor their performance. And hint, hint, you're not going to be able to get parents to do it either, even those who really want to. Some of my own siblings and family members have been saying to me, listen, my kid is doing math the old way, understand? Because so many parents these days don't know the new math. One of my friends is a principal, an elementary school principal, and she said to me, okay, this is a secret, but now I'm making it, national news. She said, I paid my son who just graduated from college. I paid him to tutor his younger sister in this new math. Now, this is an elementary school K-4 principal who is paying her son who just graduated from college to tutor his 9-year-old little sister with her math because her mom, the principal, is struggling with it. So things have changed in the classroom. So you have to apply alternative assessments to how student learning is being evaluated. So give yourself a break. First of all, for teachers, remember this. In your lesson planning in this online environment, it is not about what you have students doing. It is all about what you have them learning, and it's okay if that is one thing. You with me? When you sit down in front of that camera, whether it is for 3 hours, 2 hours, or 30-minute segments, get the lesson plan or objective or outcome in your mind as this is the one thing or maybe the two things you want the students to learn. And then make sure that there is some kind of assessment opportunity for you to determine whether or not they understood what it was that you set out to teach. That's what's important. Make sure that they understood it. So let's say you're going to focus on something current. Please focus on something current. I mean, I hope you're talking about the coronavirus, perhaps in a science class, but you could also be talking about it from a social studies or even sociology or even psychology perspective. You could be talking about it in terms of political science and public policy right now. You could be talking about it in terms of medicine and medical development. You can even be talking about it in terms of history, historical events that have taken place, related to national pandemics or emergencies. You could be talking about that in the context of the horrible tornadoes that we've had up and down the East Coast here recently, and how that exacerbates the issue of people trying to deal with those who have been diagnosed or not yet even diagnosed by having the virus. You could even be doing this in an English class. You could be having them write about it and talk about their opinion and do an examination of propaganda and what's being said on different news channels. You might certainly in a math classroom be dealing with, the death toll or the extent to which they are able to get enough tests out in the different places and what's happening in different cities. So connect what's happening in real life to what is happening in the classroom, whatever your content area is. But let your assessment of it not necessarily be a worksheet, not be a test, end of the day, end of the unit exam, but more a check for understanding, a monitoring of what they've learned. Now listen, parents, stop asking your children, what did you do today? What did you do in that class? What did you do during the Zoom session? Even after this pandemic is over, don't just ask your children, what did they do? Ask them what they learned. Give them an opportunity to explain it to you. Encourage and provoke them to articulate not just what they did, but what they learned. What did you do today? We had music. What did you learn in music class? What did you do today? We drew pictures. Okay, what did you learn about art, about drawing pictures when you looked at somebody else's picture? So in terms of assessment alternatives, and this is for the student teachers out there, formative assessment is when you help a student along the way and you're constantly monitoring and checking for understanding. Parents, formative assessment is what you do when you tell your children to clean their room and then you go in the room with them and you say, well, your socks are still on the floor and where do those shoes go? And is that the way you want to make up the bed? Is that the way it should be made? And why are those books on the floor? And look at your toy box and why is this out of place? Formative assessment is helping as they go so that they understand this is done well, this is not done well, this needs to be tweaked, this needs to be changed. Formative, you're giving lots of hand-holding and help along the way, like a teacher who does the assignment with the students, asking them questions as they go. Summative assessments are when students have done work on their own and then you're getting feedback or outcomes on the end. They do the whole worksheet, they do the whole workbook, they do the whole activity, they watch the whole video, they read the whole chapter, they answer some questions, and then you look at the outcome or the conclusion and you're looking at their performance holistically. That's more of a summative assessment or a summary of everything that they've done and how well they did it. But then there's also what I like to call authentic or alternative assessment. That's when you as the teacher or parent come up with the creative way to determine what students are learning. Remember, not what they're doing, but what they are learning. And you want to do that in a creative way. Sometimes it's having students make a presentation. Sometimes it's how they respond to a certain question. It's a problem-solving activity. It's a project. In a few weeks, I'll be talking about how to do projects in an online environment. So it could be a cooperative learning activity or collaborative activity that you have the students doing. But how are you going to assess, evaluate, or determine determine in a creative, alternative, maybe a little bit unorthodox way that they have learned something? Are you going to have them give you one word that describes what they got out of the lesson or the activity? Are you going to tell them, post in the chat box what you are thinking? You could get a lot of interesting things, but it's good to have them write in the chat box what they are thinking. You might have them write on a piece of paper and hold it up, the answer to this question, but make sure that you come up with a creative way to assess what they learned, but also that they learned something. So listen, give yourself a break, parents and children. Those of you who are parent teachers, teacher parents, teacher assistants because you're a parent, who are helping your students with these workbooks and worksheets and stapled packets that have been sent home, don't just go through it to get through it. Please don't send your child over to the dining room table or what have you and say, work on your packet and you need to get through the next 5 pages. No, get through 1 page, sit down and talk about it. Ask them, what was this page about? Not what did they do, but ask them, what did they learn? You want your children, just as teachers want their students, to think as learners. So that's kind of my focus for tonight, applying alternative assessment. So you may be saying, okay, Dr. O, what does that look like? Well, you heard me earlier. It could be a journal assignment where you have them write a paragraph about what they've learned and then submit that to you in the online portal, or maybe they send it to you by email, however you're collecting it. If you're a parent and your students are working independently on a self-paced worksheet packet at home, then you want them to be able to articulate what they learned, maybe in a journal, maybe in a few sentences, maybe in a conversation with you. Maybe students will interview each other, maybe after they finish their assignment online, or if you have a study buddy for your child who's in the same class, goes to the same school, doing the same work, or even a sibling, have them talk to each other. What were you working on? What did you learn? What is it that you know? What is it that you don't know? What do you want to know more of or know more about? These are examples of alternative ways to assess and evaluate student learning. Please, I am begging you, in this classroom without walls environment, let's not just have students doing things to be doing things, doing worksheets or sitting through online experiences just for the sake of checking off the day and saying we all survived. Make it meaningful. Have an actual learning objective or outcome that you want students to know and be able to do. And the best way to assess that is their ability to share or show it back to you through some kind of alternative assessment opportunity. So you heard me say journaling, you heard me say a picture, you heard me say an interview or a conversation, you heard me say peer review or peer chatting where they talk to someone else. This is what I got out of the lesson. What did you get out of the lesson? This is what I learned today. What did you learn today? Here's something that I know that I didn't know before. What do you know that you don't know before? Parents, please have a learning conversation with your children. It's up to you now. Let me say this, and this is for everybody. In most states, there's not going to be an end of grade exam, an end of course test from kindergarten all the way through high school, and in some cases, even colleges. Some students left campus before they had even finished midterms. Some of them will do their exams at home and self-paced and mail them in or submit them on Blackboard and an online platform. But my point is, we're not going to have the end of grade data that we would normally have every year. That data gets disaggregated. That means explicated, pulled apart, analyzed. I try to be sensitive to the fact that I may have anyone joining this call and you may not know all the educationese and what I call the teacher speak. So I try to explain things in layman's terms. So you may not have the data to pull apart, analyze, or disaggregate. That is what principals and school leadership teams would be doing with all of this student test taker data at the end of the school year. And they'll be looking at which students are on grade level, which ones are not, which are far behind, which are a little behind, which are further along in their learning, who gets placed in this grade or that grade next year, what kind of extra enrichment do we need. Hopefully they're sending information and suggestions home over the summer saying these are some things that your students need to work on and think about to make sure that they catch up some over the summer. But you won't have that data because all of the student testing, I think in almost every state, has been put on hold. I am aware that for a lot of high school students, there's still going to be some of these AP advanced placement exams because a lot of high school students need that to get the college coursework and college coursework and placements that they want. But that may not be true for everybody in every state and every county. So my point is you won't have assessment data, evaluative data, student test data, numbers, statistics to determine where they are in a learning continuum. And I'm telling you, that's not anybody's fault. So teachers will be starting from scratch with a new roster of students in the next school year this fall. Hopefully we'll be going back to school this fall with students for whom they don't have any actual data or numbers as to where they left off and what the student's strengths and weaknesses are. And you as parents won't have it either. So that is why AAA, applying alternative assessments, is really important. You figuring out how to do this at home and teachers understanding and figuring out how to do this in an online environment. So it's really important that they have some practice doing this, and I gave you lots of examples. But keep this in mind. At the end of the day, an actual day, today is Tuesday, you want your children, I don't care what age they are, you want them to be able to articulate to you, this is what I learned today, not just this is what I did. And I'm encouraging parents because teachers wrote to me saying, Kathy, please talk to the parents. So I'm encouraging you to do the same thing because children in a traditional environment spend 180 days in a classroom, but they spend the rest of them with you. So there has to be learning that goes on at home as well. You have a landscape business, you have your son, your daughter working with you. You have to ask them, what did they learn about the tools, about the equipment, about what you had them doing? You're cooking together with your daughter or your son. You need to ask them later, what did they learn about measurement or whatever it is that you all were working on or cooking in the kitchen. If they're doing an assignment online, reading a book, doing a worksheet packet, please, parents, ask them not just what they did, but what they learned. That's going to help you. It's going to help your child. It's certainly going to help teachers and help your students to continue learning through this strange classroom without walls season that we're in. Okay. I'll see if there are any questions tonight. Before I get to that, I have to say this, and I would have been remiss not saying this in this series of Tuesdays and Thursday night live videos that I'm doing. So listen to this carefully. Parents, please create a learning atmosphere in your house. Now, I have heard horror stories from so many of my teacher friends. I'm from the South, so I can say near nigh. Some of the stories I've heard are near nigh ridiculous, understand? So some of the things that's going on, listen, parents, we just can't do this. We all have to work together. So create a learning environment. If they're going to be in their room at a desk, they need to be at that desk in their room every day at whatever designated time is for schoolwork. They should be doing their homework at a set time every day. You can't have the schedule all over the place. That's horrible for kids, especially age 13 and under. Age 13 and under, they need structure and they need a consistent schedule even more than the teenagers. So you want to make sure you have a designated place for them to do their work every day. You want to make sure that they have all the tools that they need in that place. Your child shouldn't be getting up from the computer or getting up from their work packets to go and find a pencil, to go and find a ruler or a measuring tape, to go and find crayons or markers or a calculator. You want to make sure that you have all this in a bin, in a basket, in a shoebox, in the drawer. I don't care. Just make sure they have all their learning tools right at arm's length for while they're having their learning experience. Let me say this. Snacks are debatable. You might need to determine whether they need to have snacks, maybe water, but just be careful. I mean, when my teacher friends tell me that their students are eating, cotton candy, spaghetti, SpaghettiOs or whatever. I mean, come on, make it a learning environment. Try to be as close to an authentic schoolroom environment as you can make it. If they're setting up somewhere in the dining room or the breakfast nook or the family room, make sure they're there all the time. And please, parents, could you lessen the interruptions? Please just lessen the interruptions. You and your spouse walking back and forth and walking through, grandma yelling, how's it going? Are you learning? I mean, really, seriously, try to make it an uninterrupted environment. That's what teachers try to do in the classroom. Children are so easily distracted, and it's really difficult, you know that, to get them back on topic. So make sure they have, as much as possible, an uninterrupted environment. Focus, that's the word for the day. Make sure that your students can really, your children can really focus on the learning. And I'm just going to say this, teachers are rock stars. If they've never been deemed a celebrity or a rock star before, teachers are a rock star right now. I am telling you, you need to give them all the kudos, all the credit. Parents, you need to send them an email saying thank you. They are working hard to create a positive learning environment for your children during this time. So please show them all the respect in the world, just out of respect for what this professional has to deal with. You want to create an environment in your house that helps them to be successful with your child. So some of the feedback that I've received since I've been doing these in the Teachers Lounge meetings is, please, Dr. O, would you say something to the parents about how they can create a learning environment at home? And let me just say this, parents, celebrate the milestones, celebrate benchmarks. What that means in education work and the education world, or teacher speak, what that means in our language in the classroom is that you have to celebrate student successes. So when they do well on a worksheet, a packet, an assignment, when you have them write out what they've learned, when the teacher has them write something down and says, good job, take that and stick it on the refrigerator, hang it on the wall, put it on the bathroom mirror, but just try to do everything you can at home in this unexpected, unanticipated homeschool environment to ensure that you're celebrating small wins and their successes. Why? Because we've been talking about AAA tonight, applying alternative assessments. And so the assessment and the evaluation of instruction and doing well is not limited to a test, not necessarily a report card, and certainly not end of grade, end of course, end of semester, end of school year data. It's based on every day being able to articulate what they learned, not just what they've been doing. Okay, so if you have any questions, please type your questions in the chat box and I will take questions from you. I got a question last week, and I'll start with that one while I wait to see if anybody wants to enter a question. But one of the things I was asked last week is that one parent said, my son lacks confidence. He's just not sure of himself. He has been in many ways somewhat withdrawn at school and doesn't feel that he's smart, and the work is really challenging for him. So now that he's at home, it's almost a crutch for him to not take it seriously and not do his best work. How can I work for him? Work with him, or what should I do for him? And listen, parents, and I've told teachers this before, get your students learning opportunities and experiences engaged in areas of their interest. If they're into race cars, connect that to the learning. If they are into everything going on with coronavirus, connect that to their learning. If your daughter is into clothes and fashion design, and I hate to sound stereotypical because I watch a lot of shows on HGTV where some of the most girly girls are tearing down walls and doing demolitions and that kind of thing. So I don't want to stereotype anybody's gender, but whatever it is that your child is interested in, if your daughter is interested in landscaping and contract work or being a barber, if your son is interested in being a chef and watching the Food Channel, whatever it is that your children are interested in, connect that to the learning. And that will help those students who are unsure of themselves, who lack a little confidence, who may struggle in some areas. That makes it easy for them. Listen, if you don't like to read, then you don't like to read. But if you're reading about something that you enjoy, then you'll start reading. Young boys who are into basketball, they'll read a magazine article or a newspaper article about Kobe Bryant. They'll pay attention to the Michael Jackson, maybe that, if that's what they're into. They'll pay attention to the Michael Jordan documentary that's coming up. If you're your children are into church and Christian music, there was a documentary on recently about a team of female siblings who are icons in Christian music. So whatever your children like or are interested in, that's what you have to get them engaged in. And I'll just go ahead and say, teachers know that, and teachers should do that. They know that they should connect student interest to learning. Okay, any questions? Let me see if there's a question from anyone. Timing. How do you manage the timing for children who struggle paying attention? Oh, I guess what I just said is the same answer. Children will pay attention to any assignment that is connected to the things that they are interested in. When you have 12, when you have 24, then you aren't going to have 12 or 24 different topics to meet all of them. But when you can figure out conglomerately, like have a consensus of the kinds of things your students are interested in, then you can teach whatever your content is in connection with that. And you want to be very intentional about it. And then in terms of attention spans, especially in an online environment, get to the point and keep it short. You cannot do these elongated assignments. You can't read a whole 13, 24-page book during a 45-minute segment. Read 3 pages and stop. Ask them to post in the chat box what they're thinking, where they think the story is going. Ask questions. What would you do next? What do you think the character is going to do next? In the math assignment, they're working on it together. You pause and let them work on it. But you have to figure out how to keep them engaged. I'll talk about student engagement a little later in this series of Tuesdays and Thursday nights, but that is really important. I can't say it enough. Figure out how to take their interest and connect that to whatever your content area is. Someone is writing to me, my child is the same way. I can tell he's used to hiding in the background, but now he's the sole focus of this homeschool. Absolutely. And that's another thing. Let me say this. Children who are withdrawn in a classroom environment sometimes tend to be the opposite in a homeschool environment because they have the comfort of their own home. And then students who are a little more involved and chatty and all of that will be less so in an online environment, but they'll be distracted by all the things that are happening in their homes. And I've talked about this before, why teachers need to have a hook. So you've got to make sure that when you step on the screen, teachers out there, you're saying and doing something that students want to pay attention to. And get creative. Wear a wig, wear some big glasses, bring your cat, your dog, whatever pet. You heard me say that one of my teacher friends said that one of her children, there really is a pet alligator in the house. So be creative, teachers. Bring your little youngster, your baby to the camera and talk about those kinds of things, and make a math lesson be about how many bottles a day and all of these kinds of things. Some of you may be saying, Dr. O, are you serious? Oh, absolutely, I'm serious, because you're not in your traditional classroom anymore. So not only are you bringing your A game, you're using every trick and tool that's in your toolkit to get your students engaged in learning. And this is true for parents as well. And I just want to challenge every parent. You can take this a dare. I know that some of you are working from home and you have full-time jobs as well. Some of you may even be educators yourselves. But I do want to put this challenge out there to all the parents. Spend time learning with your child. Whether it's an hour, 2 hours, whether you take a day off, a half a day, sit down beside your child at that computer and pay attention, or sit across from them at the table or somewhere else in their room while they're at the desk, and you get involved in the learning yourself. That helps to really keep your child engaged and focused. If you and a younger child are off in another room or going to walk the dog or watching cartoons on television, and then you expect your older child to just sit and stare at the screen the whole time, it's hard for them and it makes it hard for the teacher. So I hope I addressed that question about hiding in the background and the other person about maximizing the time. Listen, if you have other thoughts, ideas, questions, or concerns, you can write directly to me at info@DrCathyO.com. Info, I-N-F-O, at DrCathyO, D-R-C-A-T-H-Y, the letter O, at DrCathyO.com. Info@DrCathyO.com. You can follow me on all social media as DrCathyO. I'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time in the Teacher's Lounge. Thank you so much for joining me. Tell parents, principals, teachers, school administrators, every educator you know, every parent or grandparent who's concerned about student learning and this classroom without walls, tell them to join in. I want to say something that will help you, and write to me, because I'm certainly intentional about answering your questions and making sure that this time is helpful. Listen, I have to give kudos out to all of my colleagues all across the world who are really serious about this online environment and making sure that students are really learning. Teach with fire, teach with passion, teach with compassion, teach with commitment, teach till the walls fall off. Bring your A game to the screen every time you sit in front of these little kids. My prayer for all of you tonight is for the safety, health, and wealth of your family during this difficult time, and that learning will take place in your home, in your classroom without walls, in ways that impact not just what students do and not just what students learn, but who students are. I'm Dr. Cathy Owens-Oliver in the Teacher's Lounge. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. Have a good evening.